Hi, I'm Kim O'Rourke and I'm going to talk to you about all things binding, and over the next few little videos I'm going to show you what the difference is between the different types of binding and where you would use it. I'm going to show you how to cut it, I'm going to show you how to make it, how to join binding strips together because we will need to do that, how to attach it to your quilts and how to do those elusive mitered corners. They're not elusive when you know how to do them, and I'll show you how to do all of that. So I've broken this down into a series of little short videos so that you can pick the one that you need. So watch out for the video that you need to help you the best. So let's start off in this video and talk to you about the different types of binding that you need. So let me just switch camera. Here we go. So this is a Celtic applique wall hanging that I did a few years ago. And we've got two types of binding on here. This is the binding around the edge that you would recognise for the edges of quilts, the edges of your table mats, your table runners and so on. And this is just a standard 1/2 inch binding that we've got going all the way around the edge here, which finishes off our project, captures the 3 layers inside, so our top layer, our wadding and our bottom layer, and it finishes off all nicely for us. Now, because this is just going around in a straight line, we do not need to cut on the bias at all, because binding for some reason all gets lumped together under this general heading of bias binding, and it doesn't need to, because we've got these two types. We've got this straight of grain binding, and we've got our bias binding, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. So if you're looking at any project that you're going round the edge of a square rectangle piece of project, you need just to cut on the straighter grain. That's all you need to do. There's nothing more fancy than that. So we've got a strip here that's just been cut off our fabric straighter grain. That's all we need to do. So this binding here has started off with a strip that looks a bit like that. However, when we come to our Celtic applique in this example, we need fabric that's going to bend round corners for us. We need to be able to manipulate it around corners. So this is Celtic applique. You might have a stained glass window project that you're doing, a stained glass fabric, stained glass window fabric design, not an actual window. You might decide that you want a round pot holder or a round table mat, or you might have got a table runner pattern that's got this beautiful wavy effect along the edge. And in that case, you're going to need to choose a bias binding. So that is when fabric is cut on the bias. So if I show you on this piece of fabric here, which is kind of square, you'll see we've got the warp and the weft. We've got our selvages at the edges of the fabric. The selvages are where it's attached to the loom when they're weaving the fabric. And when we're going that way across the weft here, it is not very pliable, it's not very stretchy. Even on the warp as well, the same thing, it's not very stretchy. It's a little bit more, but not very much. However, when we pull diagonally across the fabric, so try and get my hands in camera so you can see, if I pull diagonally, you'll see that there's an awful lot of stretch in that fabric. And therefore, we can use that stretch to our advantage when we're going around these corners and these curves here, because if we use that stretch, we'll come around with no puckers and no little creases or anything like that. We can smooth and move our fabric where we want it to go. So it's important to decide why you need your fabric or why you need your binding, what purpose is it for, and then you can decide whether you need a straight grain binding or whether you need a bias binding because you're going round curves. So that's the two types. You've got your straight grain binding and your bias binding. So I hope that has been helpful on this video. In the next video, I'll show you how to cut your strips for your binding. See you then.